Here we go. And joining me right now here on the Mark Moses Show is my good friend Chris Scram with the Augusta Free Press. I know he was on last week, but I have to bring him back on for another video I found on YouTube. We have to start with this. Chris, how you doing today?
We're on the video review segment part of the summer here, right?
Yes. I need to discuss this with you. So, last week I found that video where it was that Jimmy Hart promotion I've never seen before with Hulk Hogan and you know what? I don't even know what it's called now. I've already forgot about it. What was it called?
XWF, Excitement Wrestling Federation.
Did you watch any other of the videos after we talked?
Oh, no. I couldn't bring myself to that.
All right. Well, I found this British guy where he will review old episodes of WCW at the end before they died in, I don't know, early 2000. They're phenomenal to watch. Where they're 15 minutes long, he breaks down an episode. It is amazing how terrible that show was. What are your thoughts?
Oh, after 90, maybe early 98? Yeah, WCW, unfortunately. That was a big, I would say WCW fan was more of the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, the predecessor of WCW. I was a fan of that wrestling. WCW by the mid-90s, late 90s was nothing like that wrestling. And boy, when, the whole Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo era, the last couple of years there, it was atrocious.
Okay, the guy's name is, and I'm going to email him as well, Mark YD123. He has 156,000 subscribers. Man, we need to work on our numbers, Chris. We really do. So great.
The wrestling companies out there would love to have access to that number of people these days.
So the video I sent you is the dumbest Russo WCW episode. That's all it's called. There's that documentary where it's like what killed the WCW. Just watch one of these episodes. WCW killed itself. It did. It's not shocking that it died. Is that fair to say?
I'm watching that now. I missed last night. Last night was the finale. It's a 4-part series you're talking about there on Vice TV. I'm going to watch it later on DVR. But yeah, I was as a contemporary observer of the fall of WCW. It wasn't if WCW was going to die; it was when.
All right, you watched all 4 episodes. Who is responsible for the death of it?
There's not one murderer here. The guys behind the scenes, Jim Herd, who's someone no one's ever heard of. If you watched the series, you would have known he was an executive who made some really dumb moves, basically firing guys like Ric Flair. Let's have the greatest wrestler of all time and try to make him into a new character called Spartacus. That was his grand idea with Ric Flair, and Ric Flair decided to. Oh yeah, he was going to make Ric Flair. You're getting old. It was like 1991, 1992. You're getting old. It's time for you to move on. Let's have you cut your hair and call you Spartacus. This is Jim Herd at play here. So then, Eric Bischoff had a run with the NWO, the New World Order. That had a couple of years. That was some really good stuff, storylines and attention for the business and that kind of thing. It got too big. It got too out of control. Ted Turner sold his TBS empire to Time Warner. Time Warner wasn't interested in wrestling. You could point to Time Warner as one of the complicit folks in this. The decision to hire Vince Russo then getting his hands on it for like 3 months didn't help out at all. And so I really think, though, it's more behind the scenes. It's the bean counters at Turner and at Time Warner more than anybody else.
All right, here are my thoughts. You can't have Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff on the same show with creative control. You can't have both of them. You can have one or the other. That's my opinion.
Oh, you can't have more than one person with creative control, and too many people in that company contractually did, not just Russo and Bischoff at the creative level, but then Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Hulk Hogan and Sting, all those guys had it in their contracts where, hey, if I don't want to, have a finish to a match the way you're telling me to finish it, we're not going to finish it that way. And as someone who has booked wrestling shows, both, I did one TV show back in 2011. I did a lot of independent shows, house shows, 2013 to 2015. It's hard enough to get wrestlers to agree to anything, even when they don't have creative control. If they've got creative control, you have no chance of making something work.
Okay, the episode we watched is from May 3rd, 2000. The episode is 24 years old. That is insane. The episode premise is it's New York street fight rules, where now I'm laughing. I'm trying not to do it. So, like, it's 2 hours of matches where there's no referee.
Yeah.
And the wrestlers count their own 3 count, which makes no sense. Okay? 2 hours, no referee, and every single match that night, someone interferes in the match, or multiple people interfere with the match. I also saw the notes. It's the last time Macho Man ever appeared on WCW. It is maybe the worst episode I've ever seen. What is your thoughts?
This is backyard wrestling at its best or worst. Anyone out there who's listening to this, who ever tried, like when you were a teenager, to put like a mattress out in the floor or in the yard, or get on a trampoline and say, "Hey, let's do some wrestling out here." That's what that was. And it was 2 hours of it, and it was on network TV. And the hard thing to believe about that, Mark, is it took almost another year for WCW to finally have the nail put in the coffin.
Yes,
they went on for like 11 months after this. No, this is the epitome of not just bad wrestling TV. This is among the worst TV episodes of all time.
Yes.
Not just wrestling, anything out there.
Okay, so Hulk Hogan in the episode looks completely like over it. He does not want to be there. Not one bit. Like, he's like, what am I doing here? Then he leaves there to make your, what did you call it earlier? I keep forgetting. What is it?
XWF.
Okay, so he goes to XWF. That doesn't work. Then Vince McMahon gets him to come back to the WWE. He does the NWO gimmick for one night at a pay-per-view, then turns back into a heel. I'm sorry. Or, you know what? I never know with Hogan if he's a face or a heel. I can never keep up now.
How you can tell is if he shaves his beard, the black beard, and he just has the blonde. If he's got the black beard, he's a heel. If he's just blonde, he's a face.
Do you remember when he wore the Mexican luchador mask and he was like Mr. America or whatever? Do you remember this?
Oh. Yeah, the gimmicks where guys, the faces especially would go under a mask and avenge their tormentors. Yeah,
I kind of black out a lot of this. I kind of look at the Attitude Era, and then I come back around. I don't know. I'm trying to think. The Shield, is that what I did? I'm not sure. What about you when you look at your brain?
Gosh, I probably watched this show when it first came on. This show we're talking about, the worst show of all time. I probably watched it when it first came on. I didn't remember it, though. When you sent the link and I watched some of it last night, I didn't remember a second of it. That tells you, that's your mind like saying, no, you don't need to store this information. It's worthless.
All right, there's one point in the episode, and you can tell we're in the dog days of summer, and the draft's going to be awful tonight. We'll get to that in a second. Here with Chris Graham. So I like the part where Mike Awesome, remember him where he was big and
I remember Mike Awesome, the fat chick thriller, if I can say that without getting in trouble.
Yeah, go for it. Whatever. Don't worry. Worse is said on cable news. So it's he was big in ECW, so they're like, all right, we're going to make the push. We're going to make him big in WCW. So in this episode, he tries to interfere in a match and gets beat up by, I think, is it Sting? And then the next segment, he comes back out to talk and then does a actual wrestling match. Who is booking this thing? It's ridiculous.
I think the wrestlers booked it themselves. That's the problem.
Yes.
With Russo, who famously said on the Who Killed WCW series, he thought he was over more than 80% of the crew at that time, which tells you where his head was. He booked himself to be the world champion. That's the height of hubris. Mark, if you ever get your hands on the book of because you're down there, you're in the heart of NXT.
Yes.
If Shawn Michaels ever calls you up and says, "Hey, Mark, I want your help with booking," don't book yourself champion. Just don't do it.
You're not going to do it. I walked by Shawn Michaels. I walked right by him, and it was one of the weirdest moments of my career. He was like getting ready for the show, and I couldn't believe it, and is this guy going to super kick me? That's what I always think when I see him. It's like, I don't know if I can trust him. How come Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo were not in the Ready to Rumble movie with David Arquette then?
Because Russo wasn't part of the company at that point. That was pre-Russo, actually. Bischoff was still at sort of his height of booking at that time. Because the movie, you got to remember, was made probably, when you shoot a film, you probably shoot it 9 to 12 months before it actually hits theaters. So it came out in like mid-98, if my memory serves right. So that movie was being made in early to mid-97 at the height of NWO. Rodman and Malone in a pay-per-view against each other, Jay Leno involved and all this stuff. So no, by that point, so the question would be more, why was Bischoff not in there? But Bischoff was too busy having his own mug on TV all the time. He was pre-Russo in terms of booking himself. He just didn't book himself to be champion, but he booked himself in all the major angles in WCW at that time.
I like Bischoff only has two different facial expressions. One, I'm the smartest guy in the room and I'm going to grin about it. Or two, what have I done? This is the stupidest thing ever.
He definitely gives the vibe of I'm the smartest guy in the room, even today. Back in the day, he certainly gave that off. And for a guy who should have some humility to himself, he came into wrestling as a third-string announcer in AWA in Minnesota, a company that was dying. But I give him credit. He calls his podcast 83 Weeks. 83 weeks, his show beat Raw. He's one of the few guys who actually beat Vince McMahon head to head.
Didn't do it long term though. That's the problem. No. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have to get him on. I know John Alba, who used to be a sports anchor here in Orlando. He does a lot with wrestling podcasts with Matt Hardy and Eric Bischoff. I might have to put in a word so then we can interview Eric Bischoff. Would you be down for this?
I would absolutely, because Eric Bischoff, for all he's very critical of a lot of things these days. He's one of my favorite characters. I shouldn't say character. He's one of my favorite people in wrestling because he did do what he did. He came from nowhere and got to book a major company for a few years and was very successful at it. And I still think he has a lot to offer in terms of insight in the wrestling business. I'd be all for that.
No. You have great insight, and you could bring a lot to the wrestling business. Forget about this Eric Bischoff. We need more Chris Graham, buddy.
Only thing I've got on Bischoff, I'm 17 years younger. So, if you hire me, I can hang around a little longer.
That'll be the name of your podcast. I'm 17 years younger than Eric Bischoff.
Here we go. His is 83 weeks. I'm 17 years younger.
I like Big Papa Pump shows up as well. And you think they're really going to promote him and really put him over? No. He also gets thrown out of the Battle Royale at the end, and they don't know what to do with him. It's fantastic.
And unfortunately, we did. That was several years before Steiner Math. That the greatest promo segment of all time.
It's
he had
the worst episode.
2/3 chance of winning. You can't argue with the math.
I love it. I really do. What did you say earlier? What was the idea for Ric Flair? What was his name going to be?
Spartacus.
What?
I swear. I wish if I could curse, I'd say I blank you not. Spartacus was going to be his new character.
That's what he was going to show up as. Spartacus.
And of course he wasn't going to be wearing a mask. He was still going to look like Ric Flair, the at that point 7 or 8 or 10-time world champion. Oh, he's now Spartacus.
Is Ric Flair? Was he on the set when the Shockmaster showed up?
On the set? Boy, I don't remember. Because I watched that episode of Dark Side of the Ring. I don't think he was. I
think he was
on the set. It was a interview segment. It was kind of like a Piper's Pit ripoff. He may have been, man. He may have actually been when the guy tripped and fell and his mask fell off. That was pretty good.
That's the best.
Clip there.
You'll never defeat the Shockmaster. I'm sorry, it's impossible. The only one I could think of where the crowd just did not have it was, I'm looking at it right now. Ric Flair is in the segment with Sid Vicious, Harlem Heat, the British Bulldog, and Sting when he was like a good guy before the Crow. There you go.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That was the guy. The Shockmaster was Tugboat. The guy from WWE, part of the natural disasters team. He was teamed up with the Earthquake. Oh, goodness.
Okay.
That's way too deep.
What we have just talked about over the last 14 minutes is that more exciting than anything that's going to happen tonight in the NBA draft?
Who is even going to be? I asked who's going to be the number one pick. I've seen the name. I don't have it in front of me right now, so I can't tell you. We don't have a LeBron James. We don't have, anybody of any name value. This draft is pretty weak. I mean, it's there's if the Hawks won the lottery, congratulations, you get the right to overpay somebody for a few years. This is Dwight Howard was the number one pick. Actually had a decent career until centers got phased out. But I'm trying to think of that guy. Olawokandi was the number one pick way back in the 90s. This is that kind of draft this year. There will be a few NBA guys, that will be contributors to decent teams out of this draft. But no, this is the WNBA draft was the draft of the summer.
That is the most depressing thing you've ever said to me. But you're absolutely right.
Caitlin Clark. I mean, after Caitlin Clark, the WNBA draft was depressing. But there's nothing to And here I want to say this. I've been able to say this publicly. If Bronny James gets drafted tonight, I am not watching a second of the NBA next year.
Why? Because it's ridiculous.
Because he's a 4-point per game scorer. It would totally be nepotism. He does not deserve. He should have gone back to college for at least a year, probably a couple of years. I don't even know after a couple of years if his skill set, such as it is, translates to the NBA. If he's one of the top 58 picks in this year's draft, I'm boycotting the NBA next year.
Will you boycott me as well? What are you trying to say?
No, and unless you are the guy that picks him. Like if the Magic decide to pick him and say, "Hey, Mark,
no way.
Wherever you are right now, hurry over to the war room because we need you to be the guy making. Because we don't want to have anybody associated with the actual organization making a pick. We have to have Mark Moses make the pick." I'd forgive you for that because that would be an opportunity. But
I think. No. But here's what's interesting: this draft is so weak that I'm not shocked that he'd get drafted. Where if it was a loaded draft, no way. There's no way. You're right.
It's weak at the top. There's not anybody. I don't know that there's any quote lottery picks that, like in past years, Giannis Antetokounmpo was the 19th pick the year he got drafted. I don't know that there's a guy at 4 or 5 that's going to be anywhere close to that good. I cover Virginia basketball. Ryan Dunn is going to be a first-round pick. Ryan Dunn is a defensive wonderkind. He can't shoot the ball to save his life. He's going to be a first-round pick. He might go as high as 19 or 20. That's how weak this draft is.
All right. You and me cover multiple levels of basketball, and we love the sport. You've written books about basketball.
Yeah.
Where is the G League Ignite? Is that a team? Is that a league? I'm still confused by this. What is it?
I think it's about to go out of operation, but it's a team that they basically, the NBA was trying to give guys who didn't want to go for one-and-done situations at Duke and Kentucky an opportunity to make money for a year, not have to go to Australia because the Australian Basketball League has had some one-and-done kids go there and get paid $100,000 to play and that kind of thing. So the G League Ignite was all first and second year guys who didn't have college eligibility. They forewent their college eligibility. That's why their record was 2-35. They were all guys who were 17, 18, 19 years old. But I think the NIL thing has kind of rendered that moot to a point where it's either already over or a year from not being in existence anymore.
Okay, what would you do, Chris Graham? Would you go for college 1 year? Would you go to whatever this G League Ignite YMCA team is? Or would you go to Europe like Brandon Jennings did? What would you do?
With NIL, and that's the qualifier here for me, the kicker for me, I would do the college thing because if you're a top guy who's going to be a lottery pick in the draft when you're first eligible, you're going to probably make more money from NIL than you are certainly from G League Ignite. I want to say their salary, their top salary was in the low 100,000s range. You go to a decent school if you're a one and done, you're going to get mid 6 figures range, about $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 at least to do that, and that's also going to be more than you get in Europe. Guys in Europe make $200,000 or $300,000. So, I would do the 1 year. Plus, it's 1 year of college. It's not like you're not actually taking any hard classes. You're just kind of hanging out and playing basketball.
Yeah, you're taking gen eds after a while. So I'm going to Math 101, and that might be too hard for me. Sorry.
I wouldn't take I would take history of jazz.
History of jazz, huh? Yeah.
Film appreciation, And I'm taking a pass fail.
Yeah. I took badminton. I had to take one gym course, and it was weightlifting. I was like, well, that's not for me. You've seen me before. Or badminton. So I was like, well, that'll be easy. It was one of the hardest classes I took in college. That is beyond hard. Whoever says that's an easy sport is crazy. Badminton is one of the hardest sports to ever play. I'm sorry I have to tell you this.
I took advanced basketball, which I thought would just be, okay, we're going to play with guys who actually know how to play. I thought we'd just be playing 2 games a week, 2 days a week. The teacher, professor, whatever she was an assistant basketball coach on a women's team.
Oh.
She had us drawn up playbooks. I mean, it's actually helpful for what I do now. But at the time, I was like, I just thought we were going to shoot hoops for a couple hours.
No, you jerk. No, I don't think so. You're not doing that. All right, so basket weaving, that's always been the joke, they always say. What else are you taking? You're taking Basketball 101. What's your other class?
I mean, there's always a good history of cinema.
Nice.
Just watch movies on Tuesday nights. I mean, that wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah, if you teach that course now, Chris Graham, the teacher gets up there and they're like, okay, for all of our younger people here, all right, I know you're all born after 2003. It's crazy to say, but yes. People used to go to a movie theater and watch movies with other people. Okay? This is great. And
now they may actually have history of Netflix.
They did. Yes, the term is Netflix and chill. That's what we used to do.
101.
Oh, man.
Can I admit here now that I actually took a class called History of Jazz, and I did take a History of Cinema class.
What did you get in History of Jazz?
A B+. I got B+ in both.
Nice. Yeah. Look at you. And look at you now on this show breaking it down. I like it.
That's the fruits of my labor right there.
I will teach history of Netflix where I'll be like, all right, so what happened was they decided there was this moment where people were getting the DVDs in the mail, right? Then they decided, hey, we can go online streaming where we don't have to do it in the mail anymore. And people were furious about this at first. Where they're like,
I was.
So you're as guilty. People were furious that they couldn't do it through the mail anymore, not understanding that it was going to be super easier to like.
I could come in and lead that seminar, that particular one, about the furor over that, because, man, I love getting those in the mail, and you just put them right back in the mail, and you could take as long to watch them as you wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was the height of 2004 technology right there.
And I also would have the DVD recorder burner, so I would rent the movies from the red box, burn them, and then I still have them in my closet, like just stacks and stacks of movies from 2008.
I've got a DVD player. I've got DVDs. I don't know. The DVD player is not hooked up to anything.
Dude.
I don't know where they all are.
I was at a flea market. I know, we're getting ready for the NBA draft. This is how we'll end it. So I went to a flea market over the weekend, and every single vendor had DVDs 2 for $1. A 2 for $1. So that's
overpriced.
It is. So I got Wall Street with Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen for 50 cents. I put it in, so I watched it. I put it in the player, and you could tell this is an original DVD where all they did was burn it from the VHS tape. That's the quality it was.
That's pretty good, right? Yeah, that's like when you find YouTube, like especially me, I watch classic wrestling on YouTube, and you see like you see the buttons that say play and rewind up on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Because they went straight from the VHS to YouTube. Those are classic moments.
All right, I'll end. My example will be a sports movie or an athlete who became an action star, kind of. This is how you know a movie is god-awful. Is someone uploads it illegally on YouTube, and no one at YouTube even cares to take it down. Okay? So my example is Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth, which is on there, and I will watch it from time to time. You know what I'm talking about.
I don't blame you for watching it. I also don't blame YouTube for not caring.
So it's on there right now if you want to watch it. Okay? That's what I like. Stone Cold. It's not that bad. All right, I'll stop. His name is Chris Graham. Some French guy's going to go number 1. I think we can agree on this.
We can agree on that, and that's the analysis. Yes,
they pay these guys, these scouts and general managers, millions of dollars, and what they've come up with tonight is, hey, Wemby was from France. Let's just draft one of his teammates. That's literally
a tall guy there with a French-sounding name. Yeah, sure.
Chris Graham, my man. Thanks for your help, and have a great day.
Thanks, Mark.